All right, today I'm going to show you how to get started on your CSS Zen Garden project. You should have already sent me your mock-ups of the two different designs you were going to choose. I will go through and you should get an email back from me explaining which mock-up I'd like you to use for the project. Once you have your design done, you should make sure that you go to csszengarden.com and you want to download the HTML file and the CSS file. Once you've downloaded those, you want to make sure that you have a folder and it should be lowercase and it should be ZEN. And then you're going to take those two files you downloaded, the index and the styles, and you're going to put them into that Zen root folder. And once you've done that, you can double click on the index and you can see that this is the Zen Garden file I downloaded and the CSS file that goes along with it. What I want to do now is I want to take this HTML file. I cannot change the HTML file. The only thing that you can change in your HTML file is you can add your, you can make sure you've added your style sheet. And you can make sure that you put your Google fonts in, and you can put your Google fonts in the HTML. So you do have to add to the HTML, but only for those Google fonts. So what I'm going to do now that I have these two items is I'm going to open them up so that I can edit them in my editor. And so I'm going to do a file. I have some things open from before, so I'm going to close those. I'm going to do a file open, and I'm going to make sure that I go to my Zen Garden root folder and that I open up the index and the CSS. And the next step that I need to do is for this project, you are going to create your own CSS file. So you are not going to use the CSS file. You might use some things that come with the CSS file, but again, your HTML, you're not going to change anything. And your CSS, so I'm going to go ahead and all these specific divs that they have, I'm going to go ahead and delete those. And then you could go in and actually modify. So if you wanted to change maybe your A link color and your visited color, your hover color. Also, this is just for all the generic paragraphs. This is the body and the HTML tags, but I'm going to go ahead and save that. And I'm going to show you what it looks like now. So now I've taken the style out of it, except it does have still some of the fonts and some of the colors for the links. I'm gonna even take this a little bit further. I'm gonna delete this abbreviation, and I'm gonna delete this H3 and this paragraph, and I'm gonna instead of having my background being the image that they have, I'm going to go ahead and I am going to add the background image that I have in my root folder. So I have already gone through and found this background image, and I want that to be the background of my CSS Zen Garden project. And so that being said, I've now added, I made sure that that background image was in my root folder, and I've now added it to my body. And I forgot a semicolon there. So now I'm going to save that, and I'm going to open up the index page. And now voila, I have a background image on this, and I still have some of those same colors. I could go in here and change my visited links. I want you guys to choose the hexadecimal value, but I'm just going to change a couple of these colors just by using the colors that pop up in Dreamweaver, just so that you can see that they can be changed. And so I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to go back, not to my online banking, but to my index. And it looks like that. So now I've changed my colors and I have my background image. The next step, what you guys need to start doing is you need to start moving all of these items around. You can go in, you can put your Google font at the very top of your index page so that you can use that font in your CSS file. And then what you can do is you can go in and start putting in your font that you want. And then the next thing that you need to do is you need to start to move these items around. And so if you look at your HTML, and like let's say this section is called Zen Intro. So I can go to my style and I can do my # Zen Intro. So it's Zen-intro. And I can start to style that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a background color on it just so that I can see it and I know what it looks like. So I'm going to put a background color of this cadet blue on my CSS intro, and then I'm going to go back and refresh it. And now that is my CSS intro block. So let's say I wanted to do something with this. I could then go in and I could say that I wanted to change the width of it. And I could change the height of it. And then I'm going to refresh it. And now you can see that I now have blocked this out because I've given it a height and a width. And I could go back and not only give it a height and a width, I'm going to go ahead and make my height a little bigger. I'm going to go ahead and give it a padding of 40 pixels all around because I want to make sure that it has a nice little padding in between. So now you can see that that's happening. If I don't give it a height at all, it should just be the height of the content. So I don't have to give it a height. If I wanted to just fit the content, I can do it that way. If I wanted to float it, I could float it to the right. We learned how to float things last week and in your homework. So I could put it over to the right-hand side and I can start boxing all of these things up and positioning them how I want to position them through my CSS. So let's look at another one. I could go back to the index and maybe this one is called Zen Preamble. I'm going to go ahead and take that and I'm going to go to my style sheet. And I'm going to make a rule out of it. So I'm going to do my # and I'm going to put the preamble. And again, I'm going to do a background color because I just want to get everything sort of mapped out so I can see what they look like and where they're at and how they all work together. So I'm not going to worry too much about other things right now. I just want to see what they look like. So now I have this, I can save it and I can refresh and I'm not finding that one. Did I spell it wrong or not save it right? There we go. So now I can see that that box is inside of this box. So if I wanted to do something with that, I could. I don't actually want to do anything with that one right now. So I'm going to go down and try this ID called Zen Supporting. You have a lot of IDs to work with. If you look, there's tons of classes and tons of IDs. So you shouldn't have a lack of the ability to find these IDs and use them to manipulate your HTML. So that's a very big section there called Zen Supporting. If I want to get shorter with it, I could go into Zen Exploration. So let's try that one. So now I have that little box that I could work on and I could go into that box and I could make my width 400 pixels and I could make my padding 20 pixels. And now I have that box to work with. So you guys can see how I'm starting to make this my own. Maybe that dark olive green color doesn't go with my theme and I want to make them all these cadet blue. I can do that, and I can start floating them around and making my design look like my mock-up. Now, a couple other things. We have not learned yet how to manipulate with screen size. So your web page is going to look very different if the screen size is really big or it's really small. For this project, I don't need it to look good on every screen size because we haven't learned that yet. But I do need it to look good on a screen size. So you need to make sure that at some point I can make my monitor a certain size and this project looks good. That's what you need to be careful of when you're working with this. You can work with all of the CSS rules we've talked about to make your layout look how you want it to look like. And you need to make sure you meet the minimum requirements of the project. So you might need to put background images inside these smaller divs to give you more background images. Maybe I've seen some of you guys have had like little drawings or little pictures in your little segments or your boxes that you've opened up for your theme.